Okay, good morning, everybody. All right, another beautiful day.
Good morning.
Okay, I see we have, we're good. Now on Yud Ches Amud Aleph, Daf Chai, right in the middle of the page, 2 lines before the wide lines. We brought a brisa yesterday, and now the Gemara is going to continue discussing more about that brisa. Starting with the word gufa. Gufa usually is the opening word that says, let's go back to that original text we spoke about. Gufa, that original text that started off, Hamishamer Esameh, someone who is guarding a dead body, Afal Pi She'enameh, so even though it's not his own relative, so already said, Potter Mikriya Shema Mina Tefillah. You're exempt from the Shema and from Tefillah, from the Amidah, Uminat tefillin, and from putting on tefillin. And we call mitzvahs amuris b'Torah and from all mitzvahs that are written in the Torah. Okay, that we had. Fine. Now the brisa continues. We only brought part of the brisa. Now we're bringing the rest of the brisa. So that was with one person guarding. So obviously you can't do 2 things at the same time. You're guarding the body. You're exempt from mitzvahs. How about if there's 2 people designated to guard the body? What if hayu shnayim? There were 2 people guarding the body. They were taking turns. Well, then obviously, Zeh Mishamer, this one can watch for a certain amount of time. V'zeh Koreh, then this one can read the Shema, the Amidah, take care of his spiritual obligations. And then they switch. V'zeh Mishamer, then the other one now guards. V'zeh Koreh, and this one reads the Shema. This way they're able to, and obviously, when the person is saying the Shema and doing the mitzvahs, he has to distance himself from the dead person. As we said yesterday, we'll be mocking the dead, doing mitzvahs right in front of them. Now, there's another opinion in the brisa of Ben Azai. Ben Azai, he says, what if they were traveling on a boat and there's a dead body on the boat, like a coronavirus on the boat, and you couldn't leave. So now you're in a boat. Is it any different? So he says it's different. Manicho besavisu, they both can leave the body in one corner of the boat. Mispalim shneim besavi acheres, and they can both pray in another corner and not really watching the body so carefully. So what's going on? Well, what Ben Azai is really saying is a body on a boat does not need such guarding for reasons the Gemara is going to explain. So, and for that matter, even if there's only one person on the boat, the person can leave the corpse and go and pray. So why did he say 2? He said 2 to emphasize that even if you have 2 and you could have one guy watch and one guy daven and take turns, you don't even have to do that. Even when there's 2, you don't have to take turns. So obviously there's a machlokes here. It would appear that there's a machlokes where he's saying on a boat. Remember, we're bringing Ben Azai as another name. It's another opinion, so he must be arguing with the first opinion in some way. So that's the end of the brayso. So now the Gemara asks, "My benai, what's the difference between the first opinion and the second opinion?" So Ravina says, "Well, why do we guard the body? That's going to be the difference. What's the primary reason we guard the body?" So Ravina says their machlokas depends on the following. If chosheshim la'achborim ika benayu, if we're concerned for mice on a boat. Now remember, one of the main reasons you are watching the dead body is to make sure the corpse is not defiled by what? By animals eating it. And mice, believe it or not, like to feast on corpses. So now, why are you watching? You're watching so the mice don't eat the corpse. So now the question, that's what everybody agrees. Question is, are there corpses on a boat? Well, let's see. So Mar Savar, so one of them the Tanakh holds that we're concerned about mice even on a boat. And therefore, there's always got to be somebody guarding the body. Umar Sover Ben Azai says, "Lo chashida, we're not concerned about mice on a boat, and therefore you don't have to guard them. And they can both leave at the same time. In other words, is there an issue? The issue is so the mice won't attack. Question is, on a boat, is there an issue? Benazai says no. The Tanakama says yes. Okay, end of that explanation. The Brisa, short piece. Next short piece. We've got a lot of short pieces today. Now, again, we're going back to the dignified way you treat human remains. Tana Rabbanan. Hamolich atzamos memakam lamakom. Let's say you're transporting bones from one place to another. Let's say a person died in one place, and you have to now move him to the cemetery, okay? Or let's say for whatever reason you have to exhume a corpse because you have to bury it somewhere else, whatever. But you're moving bones from one place to another. So what's the respectful way of doing them? He should not place them in a sack and put them on a donkey. We're not finished yet. There's more coming up. And then after you put them on a sack and put them on, donkey, do not do the following. The year kavaleim and ride on them. Okay? In other words, you're just riding on top. Because by doing that, it's treating the bones disrespectfully. You don't ride on top of bones. Okay. On the other hand, but if you're afraid for hostile Gentiles or for bandits, so he needs to ride the donkey to hurry away. He's got to go quick. So mutter, then he's allowed to ride while sitting upon the bones. Okay. Because if the other option is that the donkey's carrying the body and you're walking with the donkey, you're going to go pretty slow. So if you got to go fast, you got to ride together with the bones, then you can. So on that, and just like we said, the law regarding bones and respecting the body appropriately, so they said with the Sefer Torah. That's what the Brisa says. Now the question is, what does the Brisa mean? Just like by bones, they said by the Sefer Torah. Remember, there were two statements. Statement number one says you don't ride on top of a donkey where there's a Sefer Torah on it as well. The other one said if you're afraid of bandits, you can. So is it saying the Sefer Torah is the same on the Reish or the Sefer? So hi. So which case is the Brisa equating a Sefer Torah with the bones? Well, Ilema Aresha, if you're going to say it's going on the first case, that you can't ride on top of it, Shita, that's obvious. I don't have to say that. Bigora Sefer Torah, it's almost a Sefer Torah any worse than bones. Obviously, you have to treat a Sefer Torah with more respect. Okay, so more answers, of course, Ella Sefer. It's going on the Sefer. And that's the Chiddush, that in the presence of danger, you're even allowed to ride on top of the bones. Okay, end of that little sugya. We move on to the next short sugya. It's a little bit of agadita, some halacha, and some agadita as well. Omar Rachava, Omar Rabbi Yehuda. Rachav is someone's name. He said the name of Rabbi Yehuda. Called Haroya Hamesh. Anyone who sees a dead body being transported, in other words, a funeral procession, but he doesn't have the courtesy to escort it. Now, just to let you know, you see the word there, milaveh. Milaveh means to escort. So that's why the Hebrew term, for a funeral is called what? Levaya. It's called a levaya. Why do we call it levaya? Because it's the same root as milaveh, because it's your escorting. So that shows you the primary mitzvah of a funeral is to escort. That's why they're focused on the word escort. So anyway, somebody who sees a dead person is being transported and you're not escorting it, over mishum loeg larush cheref hoser. You're transgressing a statement of Proverbs. Doesn't mean it's one of the 613 mitzvahs, but you're acting in a not nice fashion because the text says one who mocks a pauper blasphemes his maker, which we had that yesterday. Meaning the pauper, the poor person, and who's the poor person here? The dead person. And why are you doing that? Now look at the commentary here. Very interesting. One who mocks a pauper. Why would a person mock a pauper? Well, failing to treat him kindly because he believes him unable to repay the kindness. A poor person is not going to have the means to help you, generally speaking. You mock a guy because he's never going to do anything for me. So he's guilty of blasphemy since he demonstrates his disbelief in God's ability to recompense him for the kindness. Right? You mock the pauper. You don't do kindness to him. Why don't you do it? It's a mitzvah. Well, mitzvah, schmitzvah. Can this guy help me or not? He can't help me. I'm not interested. Yeah, but what about Hashem helping you? So if you're mocking the pauper, that means you really don't believe in God. And someone who fails to show respect for the dead, same thing. We call going to a funeral is called a chesed shel emes. It's a kindness of truth, a true kindness, because you know you're not going to get paid back. So the guy says, why should I go to the funeral? He's not going to pay me back. So it's sharing a similar type of disbelief. And it's interesting, Rabbeinu Yonah says the mitzvah of escorting a body, it doesn't matter where, even if it's not taken for burial immediately, there's still a mitzvah to escort it. So let's say, someone gets buried in Israel. So often they'll have a little bit of so you have to take it to the airport. So it's a mitzvah to escort the body to the airport a little bit, even though it's not ultimately going to be buried anywhere near the airport. So anyway, so if you go to a funeral and you escort the body, so if you don't, you're really not a nice guy. So it's like you're blaspheming God as if it's not worth it to go to these people. However, the opposite, the im hilvo, what if the person does escort the body? What's his reward? Rav Asi says, the text says about such a person, malve is a play on words here. Malve Hashem chonein dal. A person, he lends to Hashem, from the word love, to lend, malva, to lend. He lends Hashem. Who's considered someone who lends something to Hashem? Is whoever is chonein dal, is gracious to the poor. And then it says afterwards, the pasuk says, and his reward shall be granted him. So you see how the Gemara is playing on the words malveh, which means lends, and the word milaveh means to escort. Interesting. So it's interesting. You're lending. So milaveh, escorting. There's many ways of escorting. There's a mitzvah to escort the dead. There's a mitzvah if you have a guest in your house and he's finished eating, it's a mitzvah to escort him out. And really, if you're living in dangerous places, to escort him to a point where he feels that he is safe and secure. Interesting idea. So that's like you're lending to Hashem. So therefore, he's playing on the words, although it says he lends to Hashem, but the word is also milaveh, escorts. So when you read it this way, one who's gracious to the poor by escorting them, and the dead is considered as if he's escorting Hashem. Okay, so, and obviously, it's like you're lending to Hashem, so to speak, although Hashem doesn't need you to give him anything. But Hashem creates the world in such a way that although he can do everything himself, he doesn't need anybody to do anything. But he created the world in a way that he wants people to do the work that he would normally do. Right? God is kind. So God can take care of every poor person. God can bury every dead person. God can do everything. But he says, listen, I want man to perfect himself. So I'm going to leave opportunities for him to perfect himself. So as it were, when you're doing something for Hashem in that way, it's like you're lending him. When you need money, give me some money. I don't have the money now, so please help me out, and I'll pay you back later. So it's the same thing, so to speak. Hashem sets up the system. When you do mitzvahs, it's like you're lending to him. And of course, Hashem always pays back, and he's going to pay you back with Olam Haba. Especially in these cases. Because, let's say I'm doing someone a favor, and I know he's going to feel indebted to me. Well, then, you weren't lending anybody anything because, you did it really for your benefit. A lot of times, you got to be careful when you're doing chesed. You can't do it for the witham factor. You can't say, what's in it for me? I'm doing a chesed, what's in it for me? Okay, I'll help these people. I'll help this guy out. He's going to be indebted for me. Now I have another person that I can count on to do favors for me. That's not the way you're supposed to do it. It may turn out that way, but that's not the way you have that in mind. The biggest proof is the best way to do it is someone who cannot help you at all. So someone who cannot help you at all, you're doing it in a way that you're not going to get anything back. Well, that's doing God's work. Because when I'm doing it for a quid pro quo, I'm not doing God's work, I'm doing my work. I'm just finding another way to benefit myself. Sometimes helping out a poor guy is a way that benefits me. But if you're helping out a guy who's not going to ever be able to help you, then what are you really doing? You're doing it for God. So you're stepping into God's shoes. So as it were, you're lending to God. And then, of course, he's going to pay you. And the rest of the pasuk says, "Umechabdo chonin evyon," and he honors him, meaning Hashem, whoever is gracious to the destitute. So when you're nice to people who are poor, you're not only you're lending to God, but you're giving Hashem proper honor, because we know the greatest honor. What's the greatest honor you could give your parents? The greatest honor you could do. Now, there's a lot of nice things you could do. You could take care of them when they're old and visit them. For sure, that's honor. No question about it. But what's the greatest honor you could do, especially if your parent was a righteous person, is to follow in their ways. Wouldn't you say that's the greatest honor? Because that outlives them. Your parent, had a certain nice meetup, and maybe, and you do things similarly because you saw your father do it. So now, and it's a little better behavior than other people generally do. So that's a unique thing your parent did, which was really nice, and you continue doing that. Well, that's probably the greatest honor you could give a parent, because you're saying the parent gave me this, I value what he gave me, so much so that I behave in that way in the future, that eternalizes them. So that's the same thing with Hashem. When you're doing the things that Hashem wants you to do, and the greatest thing Hashem does, he does chesed for those who cannot pay him back. Because we can't pay God back. But God gives chesed to the richest man in the world. The richest man in the world can't pay God back, as it were. So now, if you really honor Hashem, you're going to do what Hashem does. And what do? You're helping out people who can't help you back. So that's a very important thing to realize. When we do chesed, besides the fact it's a mitzvah, it shows you honor HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's a beautiful thing. End of that little sugya. Moving on to the next short sugya. Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Yonason Avishak Livazabe Sakvars. Two rabbis were walking in a cemetery, and Hava Shadya Techelta the Rabbi Yonason. Rabbi Yonason's tzitzis. Remember, they didn't have tzitzis the way we have, where the tzitzis are an inner garment. They had, clothes, let's say long robes or things like that. And, or let's say outer jackets, like a long jacket. And they'd attach tzitzis to them. So those tzitzis really could come all the way down to the ground. Okay, it was like their outer wear, and it's coming down to the ground. So Rabbi Yonason's tzitzis were dragging over the graves. Okay. Omer le Rab Chia said to him, Dalia, lift up your garment. Kadesh lo yomer, so that the dead should not say, Lamachar boy neitzleim. Yeah, tomorrow they're joining us anyway, because everybody dies eventually. So tomorrow they're going to be joining us. And now they're mocking us. It's a mockery of the dead, because we can't fulfill mitzvahs. So as long as the tzitzis don't drag on the graves, you're permitted to wear them in the cemetery because they're attached to your clothing. We're not expecting you to undress in the cemetery. Okay? And interesting, if you're wearing tefillin, remember there were tzaddikim who wore tefillin all day long. So when they're going to through a cemetery, you have to take off your tefillin. Now you could do that. But remember, in those days, they attached the tzitzis to the actual clothes. So now, as long as the tzitzis aren't dragging on the ground, but let's say they're dangling. So isn't that disrespectful then? Well, but what's your choice? Take off your clothes? You can't take off your clothes because you have to show respect to the living. You don't go without clothes just because the dead are upset you're wearing tzitzis. So as long as you're not dragging them on the ground, so you can have the tzitzis. Now you can say, well, what about us nowadays? So here's the difference. Remember, in a better world, in the ancient times, they mamish put the tzitzis to their clothes. And mamish sent home the message. I wonder, do you think people would be, I'm just throwing out a theoretical question. Let's say all men's suit jackets were four-cornered. That was the style. Mamish four-cornered. And you didn't want to look weird. You'd have to put tzitzis, mamish, on your jackets. Would you do that when you're going to work? But in the olden days, what's to be ashamed of? Tzitzis is tzitzis. You hang it. So anyway, but now clothing changed. We make a separate garment of tzitzis. And there are Hasidim, who wear their tzitzis over their shirts. Then they have a nice big black jacket over that. But people can see their baguette. And when they're at home, when you see Hasidic guys, working, it's hot. So they got their tzitzis on top of their shirts. Okay, anyway, that's one. But most of us have our tzitzis inside our shirts. Okay, so now there are those who, like me, have the tzitzis hanging out. It comes out. So now, when I go to a cemetery, for our scenario, the way we wear tzitzis, I now have to stick the tzitzis inside my pants, or if I have a jacket, make sure the jacket's closed, an outer jacket, a coat, is closed in a way that covers up the tzitzis. Because since now the way we wear tzitzis is that they're not dangling on the ground, and they're not coming from my actual clothing, but it's a separate item of clothing. So therefore we cover it up because there is a better way to do it. In the days of the Talmud, if you took off your tzitzis, you took off your shirt. You would have had clothes. Here I could take my tzitzis and just cover them up, and I don't have to do anything more than that. So that's the practical halacha that comes out of that. So anyway, so Rabbi Chia said to Rabbi Yonah, said, listen, they're going to feel like you're mocking them. So what? He wasn't finished. Rabbi Yonah said, so he was the opinion that the dead in the graves were aware of what's going on. So Amar Lei, so Rabbi Yonah said to him, and now this spins us into a new sugya, because the whole assumption we've been going with till now is that the dead are aware of what's going on. They're dead and buried. Now we know Jews have eternal existence, but their eternal existence is in the next world. And in the next world, they're enjoying being with Hashem. But now the question is, are they involved in this world at all? Do they know what's going on in this world at all? So Rabbi Yonah's son seemed to disagree with Rabbi Chia, and Amar Len, he says to Rabbi Chia, Umi yadi kuli hai. But how do the dead know so much about what's going on in this world? They don't know what's going on. They're buried over here. They don't exist in this state over here. They don't see me with my tzitzis dragging over them. I'm not insulting them. Now, we've had a few Gemaras that seem to suggest yes. And now let's see why Rabbi Yonason says, I don't believe that the dead are aware of what's going on right in front of their graves. V'haksiv, it says, and he quotes now in Koheles, V'amesim einam yodim me'uma. But the dead know nothing at all. So they know nothing at all. So they know nothing at all. What are we worried about? So Rabbi Yonah's son said to Rabbi Chia said to him, Amar Lei, he said, I'm really sorry, but it doesn't appear you learned it properly. Very sharp response. He says, Im Karisa, if you read this verse once, Lo Shanisa, you didn't review it a second time. Im Shanisa, if you reviewed it a second time, Lo Shalisa, you didn't review it a third time. Im Shilashta, if you read it a third time, then Lo Per Shulach, you certainly did not have it explained to you properly, because the true meaning of the verse is as follows, and it comes to the opposite conclusion of what you came to. Why? Because the pasuk continues, Ki hachayim yodim shiyamusu, for the living know that they will die. It says the dead don't know anything, but the living know they will die. Now let's put the whole pasuk together and get the context. Which means, what do you mean the living know that they will die? These are Elu tzadikim shebemisasa nikru chayim. This refers to the righteous, that even after their death, they're yet called living. That's how the pasuk has to be understood. For the living, meaning, because really, who's really alive? A tzaddik. So the living, the righteous, who are truly living, know that they will die. In other words, they take heed of the fact that they will one day die and have to give an accounting of themselves, and they conduct themselves accordingly, as we learned yesterday in the Pirkei Avos discussion, Basil Sharp. But the dead, let's go back to the dead, which is really the wicked. We'll see why they're called wicked, are dead in a minute. They know nothing at all, which means they take no heed and continue to sin. So now we're going to see what's going on over there. The pasuk is not saying the dead don't know what's going on. It means the wicked, who are considered dead, as we'll see shortly, they don't know anything. They don't consider the next world. It's not talking the dead when they're dead, they don't know anything. It means that the living, who's living? Those who know they're going to die, and therefore are tzaddikim, and therefore they know there's going to be a world to come, so they're considered living in this world. The Rishonim, who don't want to know about the next world, they're considered like they're dead in this world. It doesn't mean that dead people don't know what's going on in this world. It means a Russia who doesn't care about the next world and doesn't behave properly, it's like he's not alive now. And how do we know all this? Shenemar, because there's another pasuk that says in the book of Shmuel that shows support that the righteous are considered living after their death. It talks about Ubinayahu ben Yehoyada ben Ishchai. Sung about Binayahu, he was a big scholar, son of Yehoyada. Now, an interesting then, it says the son of Ben Ishchai, the living man. So that's the text we have over here. So what does that mean? Parenthetically, you have the Ben Ishchai, who wrote a sefer, Anam de Plum, that he wrote 3 works called Ben Ishchai, also Ben Yehoyada, and Binayahu, all written by one great Sephardic rabbi. Anyway, it says this fellow, Binayahu, Ben Yehoyada, Ben Ishchai, the pasuk continues, Rav Pa'olim Mikav Tze'el, of many achievements from Kav Tze'el. What do we know about him? Hu hika Eshnei Ariel Moav. He struck down the 2 commanders of Moav. Pasuk goes on. Hu Yorad, and he went down. Vehikas Hari B'Soch Habor B'Yom HaShelek. And he went down and slew a lion in a pit on a snowy day. Very unusual pasuk. Now we're going to start analyzing the pasuk. Ben Ishchai. What does it mean of Ben Ishchai, son of a living man? The obvious question. Otu Kuliyama B'nei Mason. Anybody else son of a dead man? Of course, you're the son of a living man. That man's alive. He's a father for you. Ella Ben Ishchai. What does it mean, Ben Ishchai, the son of a living man? In the sense that his father was so righteous. His father was called a Ben Ishchai. Shafilu B'misaso Karichai. That even after his death, he's called living. So even after the fathers of Benayo died, he remained the son of a living man. And Benayo's father, Yodada, was the head of the Sanhedrin. He was a big tzaddik. And so therefore, that's the proof. That's all we need. There's more, but that's the proof that he's still considered a living man. And that's that whole idea. Because a tzaddik, since he has a soul, the soul is eternal. They followed the directives of the soul. So now when your body is decommissioned, your eternal existence in that soul. And really, when you're not alive in the body, you're more alive as a soul. It's not held back by anything. So here you clearly see that people do know what's going on in the next world. They know what's going on over here because they're eternally alive. So you learned the wrong shot in the pasuk. Now he's just finishing off this brisa now. Rav Pa'oli Mikaptzel. Let's just finish it off. Many achievements from Kaptzel, meaning to say, we're taking a contraction. What's this strange word, Kaptzel? Kaptzel is a contraction of Shariba V'Kibetz Po'al Torah. He increased and granted achievements for Torah. So it's Mekabetz El, to gather for God's sake. So that was another attribute. He garnered achievements for the sake of Hashem's Torah. Also, V'Huhika Shnei Ariel Moav, he hit the 2 commanders of Moab. What does it mean? Shalohiniach kamoso. It means his stature was so great, there was nobody after he died that was comparable to him. Loba Mikdash Risha, not in the first temple. Loba Mikdash Sheni, not in the second temple. And that's called Ariel. The temple is called a lion because it was built, if you recall, those who went to Rambam with me, the shape was an unusual shape that looked a little bit like a lion. And it's called Ariel Moab. Why Moab? Because King David, who's a descendant of Rus, came from Moab, was the first one to buy the plot of land to build it. So therefore, the pasuk means, Binayahu, he put to shame all others who lived in any of the 2 temple areas. He was such a tzaddik. Then the next clause, he went down and slew a lion in a pit on a snowy day. Just another 2 lines. Some say the pasuk means that he broke through pieces of ice which would come over on a winter day. Why would he break through the ice? Went down and immersed himself. So that was the bore. That was the pit. That, as it were, a bore is usually a cistern of water. So therefore, he broke through it. He would go to the mikveh even under the coldest experiences. And what do we say about the lion? Because this great fear of freezing cold water is you're almost as afraid to jump in. Remember, those who've ever gone to the ROCHEL's mikveh, it's like scary as going to a lion. So, and we know, you know the laws of Tum and Tahara, that even in the days of the temple, when you had a seminal discharge, you just had intimate relations, you'd have to go to the mikveh right away. So he was very careful to do those mitzvahs even under the most freezing conditions. That's one interpretation. And finally, those who say that Tana Sifra de Rav Biyoma de Sisfa. He studied the entire Sifra, that's like halachic medrash on the Sefer Vayikra, that was written by Rav. He would study it all on a winter day. Okay, meaning to say, he would study, that's like slaying a lion. It's very difficult text. So he was so smart, he could learn a whole book on one winter day, and that showed how great he was. Be that as it may, the main point of this whole brisa was to prove to us that Rabbi Yonasan erroneously thought that the dead don't know anything. To which Rabbi Chia said, no, it means the dead, those Rishayim in their lifetimes are considered dead because their lives are meaningless. And that's what it means, they don't know anything. They don't know anything of the next world. This will lead us next week to a fascinating discussion where the Gemara is going to have a long discussion and lots of stories, fascinating stories about do the dead know what's going on in this world or not. We seem to have a machlokas between Rabbi Yonas and Rabbi Chia. Next week's going to be fascinating stories about that. Okay, very good.
Rabbi.
Yes, sir.
So, Rabbi, how do the dead see what's going on in this world without eyes?